I'm Erin, or also known as Honey LeFleur. I'm a modern dancer and burlesque performer here in Portland. I have studied dance all of my life. So that's kind of where I got into this crazy ass environment, and now have sort of branched out into performance art and creating a safe space for queers, created by femme queers, because that's not something that we have here in Portland at all. So Pink Hanky is a queer femme production trio. It's myself, my partner Christy, and our friend Bitsy LaRue, who also runs the Fancy Lady Society. And we've partnered together to create a space that is run specifically by women, for queers, women, and basically anybody that feels like they want a safe space. Our goal is to make it accessible for everyone. So we want to welcome it to the POC community, the trans community. As a white, able-bodied woman, I definitely have to constantly check in with what we're doing and make sure that we're making it accessible to performers that have disabilities or limitations, as well as, branch out into the rest of the queer community, because my reach only goes so far, that I want to actually welcome as many performers as want to apply. So we've all kind of approached this with the idea of being accountable for ourselves, the environment that we're putting our performers in, being really aware of who is actually at the shows as well. So if an audience member is not respecting the space, they will be exited real quick. And, we're not afraid. The other thing I think that's unique about us is it's, as much as we want this to be somewhat lucrative as a production team, we want to keep going, and you obviously have to have some kind of cash flow happening. We're not interested in just that. Our performers are actually very special to us, and their artwork is very special to us. So whatever they want to show is what we want to welcome for them, and make sure that we aren't asking them to do anything either that they're not comfortable doing or that they are just uninterested in. So that's always very important with us. Sure. So our first performance happened on the 27th of November. It was incredible. The not only positive feedback that we got, but just the quality of the show in general was amazing. I can't even think about it without just like my mind being blown of what all of my friends, colleagues brought to this stage. We were lucky enough to have Wine Up open their doors to us and welcome us. They pretty much closed the event, like the entire space for us, so that we could have the show in the bar and pack it full of people. And one of the most amazing things about it to me was a point where I was actually performing a burlesque act of mine, and I stood on a chair, because nobody could see a fucking thing once they were seated, because the stage was actually the floor of the bar. And it was just too tiny to hold all of us. But I stood on a chair so that everyone could see part of my act. And I realized I could literally count the number of men in the room, and that everybody working was female identified, and it was so lovely. It was one of the proudest moments, I think, of my personal career as an artist, just to be like, we're doing it, and we're doing it without dudes, and this can actually be sustainable. Like, this is a thing that people are dying over, and people are excited about, and nobody's upset that they can't see a damn thing. It was just very exciting to be a part of, and to see some of the work that my friends brought was amazing. Like, everybody brought something that was so special, so personal to themselves, and they really just made themselves vulnerable in a way that I don't feel burlesque allows. Burlesque is a really vulnerable place for you to go, because you are taking your clothes off on stage, and you can't alter the body form in a live performance. Like, it's just not possible. You can't change that. You could do it in your head, I guess, but like, you can't take an airbrush to something like you can in a photo or a film And so to ask them to go even one step further and bring part of their own personal story or something, I feel like our show took on this sort of underlying form of like the body as protest, which is my own personal just soapbox that I could get on for decades, was, it just touched my heart. It had like the Grinch heart swell that just like exploded out of my chest, because everybody brought something so powerful to the stage. Even just the few straight burlesque acts that we had were like some of the most incredible things I've seen these people perform. Yeah. Yeah. We can definitely do kind of the body as protest. I mean, it also kind of overlaps with what burlesque is to me personally, and what performance is to me personally as well. Coming from a modern dance background and such a postmodern dance background, at Columbia College, where I studied, is really fascinating to me. And there was one particular choreographer named Yvonne Rainer who is incredible. She's brilliant, but she's from the 70s, so she's really problematic, just like all white feminists in the 70s. But she had this frustration with performance in how you can't unsexualize the body. And to me, there's this really lovely quality of burlesque where it's okay to objectify somebody. Like, I'm asking you to objectify me. I want you to find me sexy. But the control that I have is that I'm telling you, like, my shoulder is sexy. My boobs aren't sexy until I decide that they are. And you are going to die to see just a tiny bit of my shoulder. And I have that. Like, you are in the palm of my hand. And that to me is really powerful, really, really special. And I think something that the audience members don't always recognize. And I think that they appreciate what they're getting, but I don't know that they recognize it fully. And so it's this really fun game, I think, between the performers and the audience. And then there's also something about the sort of lack of this untouchable quality that burlesque performers have. Like, we are very accessible to the people that come to our shows. In fact, most of them are our friends. And if they're not, they become our friends, or they become part of the community in some way, whether they're, someone who's like, I came to a show and now I come to all of them. And so now I'm friends with all of you. And I come to your parties, or like I have a party and I invite all of you and all of you show up. There's something really special to me about that keeps us out of this sort of weird elitist realm that I think, unfortunately, the modern dance community really falls into. And also, it comes from the ballet. Like, ballet is this like highbrow bullshit art, not bullshit art, but just this bullshit idea that it's so highbrow you can't touch anybody that's a ballet performer. Like, that's not accurate. They're people too, and they're citizens. And so and so then that's even a tangent, but this idea that you can have an expectation of what our body might look like, but it doesn't look like that at all. Actually, like, once we take our clothes off, it's different, or it's not what you expected. Myself, I have a huge scar across my stomach, and there's actually multiple of them. And I can't even tell you how many people don't realize that I have it, either because they just don't see it, or, I can't quite figure out why nobody sees it. It's giant. It's huge. Thank you, 1980s surgery. But it's gigantic. And so for me, being able to be comfortable with that and knowing, like, I could figure out a way to showcase that scar and really just like rock it and tell the audience, like, you're going to find this scar sexy as fuck. And you don't have a say in that. Like, you're going to find it sexy, and I don't give a shit what you think about it. There's something really powerful about that, especially as a woman, and even as a queer woman too. There's so many ideas and rules that get placed on bodies for everybody. And I think that being able to take the stage in a live form is really, it's so different. And you just, like, no one gets to have control over what you look like, really. you decide, and you can, you can allow people to have control over what you wear or things like that. But for the most part, for me, burlesque is this really fantastic moment where I get to say what is sexy on my body, and then also what everyone else is going to find sexy about my body. And then there's this really incredible freedom that's like, you might find something else sexy that I haven't really thought about. And that's okay too, because I'm showing you this. And also I'm taking your money. There's something really powerful about that. And the exchange of sexuality and money is something that I think is such a fascinating conversation. And also I tend to get frustrated when people compare us to strippers, and in a sort of negative way, where they like to say, at least you're not stripping. And they're fucking smarter, because guess what? They make more money than we do. So they're doing something right. I would hope that no one would ever say that to me ever again. It's been a long time since I've heard that one, but fucking, it's such a stupid statement. Don't ever say that to anybody because strippers do it better because they make more money. But it's so hard to really pull from how what goes through my head when I just am on stage. And actually, as a modern dancer, one of my favorite things to do is actually to present a full nude body. I've done it multiple times. And actually I walked in Critical Mascara as well this year. And I walked in their protest walk, and my protest was the body is protest. So I literally walked out there totally naked, very little makeup. I don't know that I wore any actually, and just kind of presented my body for everyone to see. And it was amazing how powerful I felt, but also how the audience responded was really great. I walked out screaming that it was not for them, and like, this is just my body. Like, it's not sexual. Like, shut up, stop cheering for me. Like, this is not for you. And they stopped. And it was just amazing to be able to be there and stand and say, you see everything and none of it is for you and none of it is sexual. And this is just my body. Like, you don't get to edit it. You don't get to change it. You don't get to focus on one thing. I'm going to draw your attention so clearly to this whole form as one thing that you just don't get to decide. I get to tell you, and it's so good. So I recently walked in Critical Mascara this year, which is run by Pepper, who's a local Vogue performance artist, who also comes from the modern dance world. That's kind of how our paths have crossed previously. And they run a TBA event called Critical Mascara, which is basically a modern voguing ball, like drag and Vogue ball. So you get a lot of, there are definitely women that walk in this, but it is mostly drag performers. And then queer POC definitely compete in the voguing portion of it, because that is where voguing comes from, is queer POC. And there's actually a lot that I could talk about with that, but not having Pepper here to sort of have that conversation with, I'll leave it at such. But there's definitely a lot to sort of discuss, I feel like, in a white performer who doesn't perform drag, creating a space for queer POC to actually compete in their beloved form that is so special. And I, as a child, had the privilege of like experiencing from one of my uncles who had some drag performer friends and voguers that I just loved them. So I know very little pieces of like circa 1989 voguing styles that are incredibly dated now, because now they're all just amazing. But so that's sort of the space that Pepper has created. And there are a few other categories as well, where it's basically like you walk a runway. And that's what the old balls used to be like in the 80s. If anyone's ever seen, like, everybody should watch Paris is Burning. It's a lovely documentary about that culture in New York City. But this is sort of the take on that, and it's a modern version of it. So there's a few categories. One is clowns first walk. So it's kind of like baby's first time, or like newer performers. There's protest walk, and then femme realness, which are always really fun and great. And there were so many people walking, but those of us that did the protest was really interesting. I think there was only one other woman, and she did, oh no, that's not accurate. There were maybe one or two other women. And then there was a genderqueer duo that was really lovely. And I walked with a newer performer named Sugar Pill, and we both got two of the highest scores of the evening, which was awesome. But I decided to walk out completely naked and use body as protest as my protest, because, you know, what's more of a protest than a woman just presenting her body as it is, with no alterations, no makeup, no frills. It was really terrifying and also very empowering for myself. I hope that I inspired and empowered other people in the audience, but it was definitely empowering for me. Absolutely. Just because, you know, as a woman, you get catcalled just wearing fucking sweatpants. It's exhausting. And being able to walk on stage and then actually open my mouth and have people hear me and then react to that was really special. There's a French philosopher named Luc Irigaray who talks about the female body, like the female as this sort of passive structure that supports patriarchy, and patriarchy is this like bigger thing that is able to move, but is supported by this idea of woman and femininity. And so she has this book that kind of discusses what happens when this foundation, this female support, starts moving and speaking, like what happens to what it's supporting. So I like to kind of play off of that a lot. I don't feel like she took it far enough. And she was also, again, another problematic 1970s, like white feminist, but that's neither here nor there. We can just move past that. And so, you know, for me, again, being a white woman, it's definitely something that I can only speak for myself, but as such, I feel like anybody that just walks onto a stage and presents itself as is such a protest against so many, not even just the beauty industry or, you know, or performance standards, but just in general, because I feel like there's so much censorship around the body and what we look like and what, you know, what we can do with our bodies. I mean, if you think about all the craziness happening regarding Planned Parenthood, defunding and just like stripping them of all of their resources so that they can't even offer care to anybody, specifically women, but they also offer a lot of services to the trans community that they can't get anywhere else, and low income. And it's just so crazy that, you know, the body, the minute you start talking about a body part, people are like, shh, we can't go there. That's inappropriate. So to be able to shove that in people's faces and say, this is a vagina and you get to see all of it. Cause I did do something where a couple people saw my whole vagina, but it's fine. It was fine. I forgot about that part. It was super empowering and really kind of, I think it was what really fueled, the sort of definition of Pink Hanky as well. It really got me. Pink Hanky was already in sort of creation at this time. And then it really kind of fueled that, like, this is really what I want it to become, is this idea of the body as protest as it changes forms and has different performers and we offer different shows. I think it'll always have that undertone because it is something I'm so passionate about, of like, there's something really interesting about how plays like live theater is not nearly as, popular or funded or like it's always seen as this weird, like elitist thing, but not really elitist. There's different attitudes about it. And I think some of it is because you can't change what body you're seeing or what face you're seeing. You have to just deal with what you're seeing on this stage. You can't change it. And it's not always made to look pretty for you. So I think that it's really important to make that statement, at least for myself, and to create that platform for other people is really important to me. Going forward with Pink Hanky, one of the biggest things that I want to do is continue to create that safe space for bodies, performers, and their work. But also for my own self too. My partner and I are actually working on a piece that deals with a chronic illness that I've had for a very long time, since birth, obviously, but have just kind of had to deal with it in the last half of this year. It's become a thing that I actively have to pay attention to, and now realize like what chronic illness kind of is. I feel like I have even just a tiny pinch of a taste of it. And her reaction to it and her ability to be patient is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, I can't imagine how she deals with it. My psychosis in all of this is not easy. The temper tantrums have increased, and her ability to keep calm and stay by my side is phenomenal. And so she does a lot of writing, and is definitely building her skills as a poet, and is really amazing at reading spoken word. And so we've started with this poem by Andrea Gibson called An Insider's Guide on How to Be Sick, that sort of speaks to what it's like to be in a relationship dealing with chronic illness, and how that can affect not only you as the ill person, but also other people in your lives, specifically your lover. And then I've created a small dance piece to it that we hope to expand into an evening-long work. One of the biggest things we want to do with Pink Hanky is actually to have our piece, our duet together with either one or two other performances that are not burlesque at all, but also like would fit in with that kind of idea, to create this amazing show that can absolutely be, our bodies are protest because they're sick or they're different. They're not the expected body that you're hoping to see. It's different than that beauty idea. And another thing that we really hope to do is actually partner with an organization it's an organization called The Body Is Not an Apology, by a woman who is a poet as well, named Sonia Renee Taylor. And she's created this incredible sort of blog and just activists. I mean, it's a really amazing outlet for activists, as The Body Is Not an Apology, that focuses on, different abilities, or bodies of different abilities, bodies of different shapes and sizes. It reaches out into the trans community, the queer community, everywhere. And it's just like, never apologize for what your form is or what your body can or can't do, which is really special to me, especially now, realizing that exhaustion is very big for me in a way that it has never really been before. Really coming to terms with that and not apologizing for something as simple as like being exhausted by just being out for 4 hours in the day and like needing a nap is something that I have very rarely ever had to do. And now it's a thing that is very real every once in a while. So, as we grow and progress, we sort of hope to pack a venue that's like pretty big and just present bodies on stage that are unapologetic and powerful, and are going to not only make you love them, but make you consider your own ideas about what the human form is and can do.
Cutting loose.